Welcome to Chapter 11.1, The Functional Organization of Nervous Tissue. This presentation will cover the nervous system functions, divisions, and cells. Let's begin with the nervous system functions. First, the nervous system includes the brain, spinal cord, nerves, and sensory receptors. It uses electrical and chemical signals to control the functions in our body. The nervous system provides several functions. It maintains homeostasis by regulating and coordinating body activities to maintain their balance. The nervous system receives sensory input by monitoring the internal and external environments. It integrates information in the spinal cord and brain. This means it processes sensory input and then initiates body responses to that input. It also controls muscles and glands. And the nervous system establishes and maintains mental activities like consciousness, thinking, memory, and emotions. Let's now continue by learning about the divisions of the nervous system. The nervous system is divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system, shown on the right side of this image, is composed of the brain and spinal cord. It receives information from the body and sends information to the body. The central nervous system, or CNS, is the decision maker for the whole body. The peripheral nervous system, or PNS, is shown on the left side of this image. It contains sensory receptors and nerves. The PNS detects stimuli and sends that information to the CNS. The PNS then communicates information from the CNS to the body. We're now going to look at how the peripheral nervous system is subdivided. The peripheral nervous system has two divisions, the sensory and the motor division. The sensory division is also known as the afferent division. It transmits action potentials from receptors toward the central nervous system. Sensory receptors are nerve endings or specialized cells that detect internal or external stimuli. They send this information as input along nerves to the central nervous system. The motor division of the PNS is also known as the efferent division. It transmits action potentials from the central nervous system to effectors, like muscles or glands. I remember efferent and effectors. So the efferent division sends information to the effectors. Now we will look at the subdivisions of the motor division. The motor division of the peripheral nervous system is subdivided into somatic and autonomic nervous systems. The somatic nervous system is the part of the motor division that runs towards skeletal muscles. This is the voluntary nervous system. It is made of one single neuron. The autonomic nervous system sends motor information to smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and some glands. These effectors are all under subconscious or involuntary control, almost like they are automatic. So I remember autonomic is sort of automatic. It is made of neurons. It is made of two neurons. The first runs from the central nervous system to the ganglion, and the second neuron runs from the ganglion to the effector, which would be smooth or cardiac muscle and certain glands. Now, the autonomic nervous system is also subdivided. The autonomic nervous system is divided into the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and enteric nervous systems. All three of these will be discussed more fully in later chapters. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight and flight nervous system, which prepares the body for physical activity. The parasympathetic nervous system is also known as the rest and digest nervous system. It regulates functions like digesting food and emptying the bladder. The enteric nervous system is found in the wall of the digestive tract. This image shows the interactions of the different divisions. Beginning from the left side, sensory receptors in the sensory division of the peripheral nervous system sends sensory information to the central nervous system. The brain and spinal cord of the central nervous system process that information and make a decision as to what needs to happen to maintain homeostasis. The somatic nervous system carries that output that goes towards the skeletal muscles, and the autonomic nervous system carries that output dealing with cardiac, smooth muscles, and gland. Autonomic information dealing with fight and flight responses travel along the sympathetic division, while information dealing with rest and digest travels along the parasympathetic division. Both of those are going to be controlling motor output. This table is from your book, and it may be useful in your understanding of how the nervous system is divided. So starting from the leftmost side, we have the division of central versus peripheral nervous systems. Central nervous system is the brain and spinal cord. The peripheral are receptors, nerves, ganglion, plexuses. The peripheral nervous system is then subdivided into the sensory or afferent division and the motor or efferent division. Motor information can either be sent along the somatic branch or the autonomic branch. The somatic branch is the voluntary nervous system, and its effectors are skeletal muscle, and the response is just to stimulate some sort of contraction. The autonomic nervous system is the involuntary nervous system. Now, the involuntary nervous system is divided into the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions. The sympathetic division goes to cardiac and smooth muscle and glands, and it readies the body for physical activity. The parasympathetic goes to the same effectors of cardiac and smooth muscle and glands, and it regulates the resting functions. Our last topic in this presentation is the cells of the nervous system. The two main cells in nervous tissue are neurons and glial cells. Neurons are the electrically excitable cells of the nervous system. They are the ones that conduct action potentials. There are three main parts of a neuron. The cell body, or soma, performs typical cellular functions like protein synthesis and housekeeping activities. Dendrites are the cellular extensions that receive information from other neurons or receptors. They are short and branched and conduct currents called graded potentials towards the soma. And lastly, axons arise from the axon hillock, which is the trigger zone where action potentials are generated. The axons conduct action potentials. The image on the right outlines these three main parts of a neuron. There are several terms related to neurons that need defining. A nerve is a bundle of axons in the peripheral nervous system. Cranial nerves originate from the brain and spinal nerves originate from the spinal cord. A tract is a term for the bundle of nerves in the central nervous system. So notice nerve is not neuron. Nerve is a bundle of neurons, but it's actually just pinpointing the axons. And those all occur in the peripheral nervous system. Now, ganglion and nucleus are two terms related to the cell bodies. A ganglion is a collection of neural cell bodies in the peripheral nervous system, while a nucleus is a collection of neuron cell bodies in the central nervous system. Lastly, a plexus is an extensive network of axons and sometimes neuron cell bodies in the peripheral nervous system. We classify neurons functionally and structurally. Functionally, we consider what direction the action potential flows. Sensory or afferent neurons send action potentials toward the central nervous system. Motor or efferent neurons send action potentials away from the central nervous system. And interneurons send action potentials between neurons in the central nervous system. The structural classification of neurons is based on the number of dendrites a neuron has. Multipolar neurons have many dendrites and one axon. These are the ones that we typically draw when we're discussing the different parts of a neuron. Motor neurons in the peripheral nervous system and most of the central nervous system neurons are multipolar. Bipolar neurons have one dendrite and one axon. These rare neurons are found in the retina and nasal cavity, and they are only sensory. Pseudo-unipolar neurons appear to have no dendrites and one axon. Most sensory neurons are pseudo-unipolar. Anaxonic neurons do not have any axons and only have dendrites. These are found within the brain and retina. These unusual cells do not conduct action potentials, but instead only use graded potentials, which we will learn about later. The second type of cell in the nervous system is the glial cell. These cells support and protect neurons. They are not electrically excitable, so they do not conduct action potentials. There are 4 glial cells in the central nervous system: astrocytes, ependymal cells, microglia, and oligodendrocytes. We will learn more about each of these. Astrocytes are star-shaped and they have processes which wrap around neurons, blood vessels, and the pia mater. They physically support neurons. Astrocytes also regulate what enters the central nervous system from the blood. They produce chemicals that create the blood-brain barrier, preventing much from invading our central nervous system. Astrocytes also limit the spread of inflammation in the CNS, and they release chemicals which promote synapses and regulate synaptic activity. The second CNS glial cell is the ependymal cell. These ciliated, cuboidal to columnar cells line brain cavities called ventricles and the spinal cord central canal. They form choroid plexuses, which have the very important job of secreting and circulating cerebrospinal fluid. The third CNS glial cell is the microglia. These are phagocytic cells that engulf and destroy microbes, cellular debris, and damaged nervous tissue. Essentially, they work to clean up the central nervous system and protect us against invaders. The last CNS glial cell is the oligodendrocyte. Oligodendrocytes form myelin sheaths in the central nervous system. These cells wrap their cytoplasmic extensions many times around axons in the central nervous system. One oligodendrocyte can cover several axons. The peripheral nervous system only has two glial cells. Schwann cells are the cells that form myelin in the peripheral nervous system. Unlike the oligodendrocytes in the central nervous system, each Schwann cell only covers part of one axon. Satellite cells surround the cell bodies of the peripheral nervous system neurons. They provide support, nutrients, and protection from heavy metal poisons. In both the CNS and PNS, the axons of the neurons can be myelinated or unmyelinated. Myelinated axons are created by oligodendrocytes in the CNS or Schwann cells in the PNS. They wrap themselves many times around the axon. This protects and insulates the axons, which results in the action potentials traveling quicker down the axon. The presence of the glial cells aid in the repair of damaged axons. The myelin sheath is not continuous down the entire axon. Instead, there are gaps between the myelin, which are called nodes of Ranvier. Myelinated axons are known as white matter because the myelin is a whitish color due to its high lipid content. Unmyelinated axons do not have glial cells wrapped several times around them. Instead, unmyelinated axons lay on top of the glial cells. The glial cells' plasma membranes will curve around the axon and possibly cover the axon one time. These axons are part of the nervous system's gray matter. In this presentation, we covered the functions, divisions, and the cells of the nervous system.